She leaned on my doorway naked, grinned boldly, and said, "Well, say something, Epi 10." Evan had always thought his assignment aboard the research station was simple. He was a human cultural liaison, tasked with observing interactions between humans and other species, documenting behaviors, and ensuring that communication ran smoothly. He never expected his work to become the center of attention for beings from all corners of the galaxy. It was a quiet cycle shift, the station bathed in the soft hum of energy conduits. Evan had just returned to his quarters after a long data review when a sudden movement at his doorway caught his eye. Lyra, an envoy from a species known for their calm yet imposing presence, leaned against his doorway. She was naked, a bold grin spread across her face, and her eyes were fixed on him as if daring him to react. For a moment, Evan froze, unsure of what to do or say. This was no ordinary encounter. Her appearance was deliberate, confident, and impossible to ignore. Evan's mind raced. He had studied countless species, read thousands of reports about their behaviors, and yet nothing could have prepared him for this. The station's sensors had flagged Lyra's movement, but she seemed unconcerned with the alerts. Her species had long studied human responses, and Evan now realized that he was not just being observed, he was being tested. He took a slow, deliberate step back, trying to regain composure. Lyra's grin widened slightly, as though she could read his every thought. She tilted her head, waiting for a response. The silence stretched between them, thick and charged with unspoken meaning. Evan could feel his heart rate climb, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was not a situation to panic over. It was a situation to understand. From a distance, the station's observation systems recorded everything. Multiple species monitored the scene through encrypted channels. The data they collected was unusual, showing an anomaly in human behavior that did not fit any known pattern. Typically, humans would either respond verbally or physically in such situations. Evan did neither. He remained still, measured, and silent. That silence, more than anything, disrupted the expectations of the watching species. Lyra's eyes flicked briefly to the observation feed before returning to Evan. There was no malice in her gaze, only curiosity and challenge. She leaned a little further into the doorway, a movement both casual and deliberate. Evan could sense the intelligence behind every gesture. This was not impulsive, it was strategic, and in that moment he realized something crucial. The humans aboard the station were underestimated. Every action, every inaction carried weight. The hum of the station filled the room. Evan's training and observation kicked in. He began to notice subtle cues in Lyra's posture, in the way her gaze shifted, in the way her body seemed to anticipate his reaction. Each detail was a piece of a puzzle he was now aware he was part of. His silence was a choice, and that choice was as powerful as any word or gesture. Meanwhile, the station logs began to flag Evan's behavior. Higher authorities, both human and alien, were notified of the anomaly. Evan remained unaware of the ripple his quiet reaction had created. Back in the observation center, Commander Hale reviewed the data, raising an eyebrow at the unexpected outcome. This human had broken the expected behavioral models in ways that were subtle yet profound. The scene continued, and Lyra maintained her position, her expression shifting from amusement to mild intrigue. She studied him as much as he studied her, trying to read the layers of restraint, thought, and strategy that humans seem to possess. Evan's silence spoke volumes. It was not fear, not hesitation, but a form of control that the observing species had not anticipated. In the corridors outside, Tomas, a fellow human engineer, was finishing repairs on a communications array. He noticed the increased activity on the observation channels, but chose not to interfere. Tomas understood that humans had a unique presence, something that could not be engineered or predicted. Even in moments of apparent vulnerability, Humans had a quiet strength that could disarm others. Back in Evan's quarters, the tension remained. Lyra shifted slightly, crossing her arms and resting her weight more firmly against the doorway. She had expected a reaction by now, a verbal acknowledgement, a nervous gesture, anything. Evan gave none. The room seemed to shrink, the air charged with anticipation. And yet Evan's mind remained clear. He thought of every species he had encountered, every report he had read, and realized that his silence was more revealing than any word he could speak. The minutes stretched on. Outside the quarters, sensors recorded micro-expressions, heart rates, and other subtle indicators. Every alien observer noted the anomaly. This human did not respond as predicted. His restraint, his ability to remain composed under direct scrutiny, challenged the assumptions that had been made about humans. It was becoming clear that humans were not merely a species to be catalogued or studied. They were a species that could influence events through subtlety and patience. Finally, Lyra tilted her head once more, her smile softening. She seemed to acknowledge the strength in his silence, the quiet dominance in his choice not to act impulsively. For a species that relied heavily on immediate reactions, this human's calm was revolutionary. She straightened, maintaining eye contact but easing the tension slightly. There was respect in her gaze, the kind of respect reserved for beings who understood the unspoken rules of engagement. Evan, still composed, nodded once. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but it carried the weight of understanding. Lyra's grin returned, less teasing and more appreciative. She stepped back from the doorway and allowed him the space he had claimed through his silence. The moment ended, but the impact rippled throughout the station. In the observation center, the data analysts exchanged quiet remarks. Humans, they noted, could turn what seemed like vulnerability into a strategic advantage. Evan had done nothing, yet he had altered perceptions, challenged expectations, and demonstrated a form of dominance that no physical display could match. Commander Hale recorded this finding in his notes, recognizing that the human presence aboard the station was more significant than previously understood. Evan returned to his desk, trying to steady his thoughts. The encounter with Lyra had been intense, but it had also revealed a deeper truth. Humans were underestimated not because of their weaknesses, but because of their unpredictability and the subtle power of their choices. Every gesture, every pause, every silence could carry meaning beyond what other species could anticipate. As he began to document his observations, Evan could feel the subtle changes in how the crew viewed him. Lyra's presence, though fleeting, had shifted the dynamics aboard the station. Other species now watched humans with a new awareness, noting the quiet strength that could emerge from restraint and observation. It was a lesson that would echo through the station for cycles to come. That night, Evan stood at the viewport, gazing at the stars beyond the station. He reflected on the encounter and the ripple effects it had already caused. Humans had a unique place in the galaxy, one that was often underestimated. The subtlety, patience, and quiet power they possessed could shape events in ways no one expected. And he, unknowingly, had become a catalyst for a new understanding of humanity. Somewhere on the station, sensors continued to monitor, recording data for analysis. The anomaly was logged, the unusual behavior noted, and the unexpected outcome highlighted. Analysts would debate the implications, strategists would adjust their models, and humans would continue to surprise the galaxy with the quiet power of their choices. Evan did not suspect the full scope of the consequences. He only knew that he had maintained his composure, respected his own instincts, and observed the situation carefully. That simple act of restraint, seemingly insignificant in the moment, had the potential to influence interactions on a galactic scale. As the station settled into its quiet hum, Evan understood something vital. Strength was not always loud. Dominance was not always visible, and influence could emerge from silence. Humans had an edge that could not be engineered or predicted, a force that would quietly reshape the understanding of other species. The doorway moment, bold and challenging, had revealed more than any report or study could convey. It had shown the subtle, unassuming power of humanity. The station did not sleep, but it did slow. Lights dimmed in long corridors, and the constant hum softened as systems shifted into low-cycle mode. What did not slow was attention. After the doorway incident, human activity was being watched more closely than ever. Commander Hale sat alone in the observation center, replaying the recorded feeds. He was human, but his role demanded distance even from his own kind. He watched Evan's stillness again, the lack of panic, the lack of reaction. Most species would have responded instantly. Evan had chosen restraint, and that choice was now spreading through layers of command. Reports arrived from multiple observers. The same phrase appeared again and again in translated notes: unexpected calm, behavioral deviation, potential significance. Hale leaned back and exhaled slowly. Humanity had been underestimated before, but rarely in such a quiet way. Across the station, Lyra moved through her assigned quarters. Her expression was thoughtful, no longer playful. The experiment, as it had been planned, was already compromised. She had followed protocol at first, but something had changed. The human silence had not felt like rejection or fear. It had felt like a mirror reflecting her intent back at her. She recorded her official statement carefully. The human subject did not respond as predicted. Emotional reaction delayed. Control maintained. She paused, then added a final note meant only for higher review. Continued observation advised. Human responses may not be externally triggered. In the engineering ring, Tomas reviewed system diagnostics while listening to fragments of station chatter. He was not cleared for the full reports, but patterns were obvious. More observers, more questions, less certainty. Humans had always adapted well to shared environments, but this was different. This was interest, not oversight. Tomas remembered his grandfather's words, passed down through generations. Never rush when others expect you to. Let them show you their intent first. At the time, it had sounded like old wisdom. Now, aboard a station full of watching eyes, it felt precise. The Galactic Council's remote chamber activated hours later. Holographic forms flickered into place, representing species that had not shared a room in centuries. At the center of discussion was not a weapon, a fleet, or a resource. It was human bonding behavior. A strategist named Vera presented the data. Humans displayed strong pair bonding, but only under conditions of choice. Attempts to force reactions often resulted in withdrawal, not submission. This made them difficult to manipulate and dangerous to misread. Several council members shifted uneasily. One delegate asked the obvious question: why focus on one human? Vera answered calmly: because one human's response can reflect a species-wide pattern. Humans adapt individually, but their core behaviors repeat with consistency. Back on the station, Evan noticed the change before anyone explained it. Conversations paused when he entered rooms. Alien crew members watched him with open curiosity rather than polite distance. He continued his work, documenting interactions, but he felt the weight of attention pressing in. Myra, a human diplomat newly arrived on the station, observed him from across the common hall. She had read the reports on her way in. Humans being studied again, but this time not as fighters or survivors. This time as partners. That concerned her more than open hostility ever could. She approached Evan later, speaking quietly. She did not ask about the incident directly. Instead, she asked how it felt to be watched. Evan gave a small smile and said he had always been watched. This was just more obvious. Their conversation was recorded, analyzed, and flagged. Humans acknowledged observation without altering behavior. Another deviation. Another note added to the growing file. Lyra requested a private meeting with her superiors. When the channel opened, she spoke honestly. The human had not reacted because he did not need to. His sense of self was not threatened by her display. That stability, she warned, made humans hard to influence and harder to control. Some council members dismissed her concerns. Humans were short-lived, fragmented, emotion-driven. Others listened closely. History showed that underestimating humans often led to long-term consequences. Late in the cycle, station security detected a minor systems fault near the observation arrays. Nothing dangerous but deliberate. Someone was testing access limits. Hale ordered a quiet investigation. No alarms, no announcements. Let whoever it was reveal themselves. Tomas noticed the fault while running routine checks. He corrected it without hesitation, rerouting power manually. The fix was simple, almost old-fashioned. The observers watching noted this too. Humans often solved complex problems with direct, low-tech thinking. The fault disappeared from the logs, but its presence raised new concerns. Not all species were comfortable with the attention humans were receiving. Fear followed interest, as it often did. Evan returned to his quarters that cycle, feeling the strain. He reviewed his notes, careful to keep them neutral. Inside, though, he sensed a shift. The station no longer felt like a workplace. It felt like a testing ground. Outside his viewport, stars drifted silently. Entire civilizations existed out there, watching humanity step into a role it had not asked for. Evan wondered briefly whether silence would always be enough. In the observation center, Hale finalized a restricted briefing. Title only, Human Pair Bonding Potential. He locked the file and leaned back. Whatever came next, humanity would not face it loudly. They would face it the way they always had, quietly. The station entered a new rhythm after the reports reached the wider network. Nothing official was announced, yet everything felt different. Humans were no longer background figures. They were variables. Evan sensed it during routine meetings. Questions directed at him were slower, more careful. Alien delegates listened longer before responding. He answered honestly, using plain words, never guessing what they wanted to hear. That alone seemed to unsettle them. Lyra watched from a distance. She had been reassigned to observational duty, removed from direct interaction with Evan. The decision came from above, wrapped in polite language. Risk of contamination, emotional interference. She understood what they feared, not scandal, influence. She reviewed the data again and again. Human behavior resisted compression. It could not be reduced to instinct alone. Humans chose restraint even when no rule demanded it. That choice created trust among their own kind and confusion among others. Vera's next council briefing was more serious. She presented projections, not certainties. In simulated environments, prolonged human presence led to increased cooperation between rival species. Conflict dropped. Information sharing increased. Authority structures softened. A delegate objected. Humans were not peacekeepers. Their history was violent. Vera agreed. Humans were not peaceful by nature. They were relational. Violence appeared when bonds were threatened. Stability appeared when bonds were respected. The room fell quiet. On the station, Tomas joined Evan for a meal. They spoke about small things, repairs, food quality. Long cycles. To outside observers, it was meaningless. To analysts, it was revealing. Humans reinforced bonds through ordinary interaction, not ceremony. A minor incident occurred 2 cycles later. A non-human technician accused a human cargo handler of bypassing protocol. Security arrived quickly. Voices rose. Observers prepared for escalation. Evan stepped forward not as authority but as witness. He asked each side to explain in simple terms. He listened without interrupting. Then he pointed out a shared mistake in the scheduling system. Neither side lost face. The issue ended. The observers noted it carefully. No dominance display, no threat, just clarity. Commander Hale added another private note. Humans resolve tension by lowering it, not raising it. This ran counter to most strategic models. Not everyone was pleased. In a sealed compartment near the outer ring, a small group met without authorization. Their species had ruled through control for generations. Humans represented a problem. You could not intimidate someone who refused to react as expected. They planned a test. The next cycle, a power fluctuation rippled through the habitat sector. Lights dimmed. Gravity stuttered. Enough to alarm, not enough to trigger evacuation. The fault was artificial. Humans responded first, not with panic but with movement. Tomas and other engineers bypassed automated systems and stabilized the field manually. Evan assisted with coordination, keeping voices calm over shared channels. Non-human crew followed their lead. Within minutes, the station stabilized. The planners watched in silence. Their test had failed. The humans had not fractured. They had unified the response. Lyra reviewed the footage later. Humans did not wait for permission when lives were at stake. They also did not seek credit afterward. They returned to work. That unsettled her more than any display of power. Evan met Myra again near the observation deck. She asked him if he felt used. He considered the question carefully. He said no. Being watched was not new. Being understood might be. Myra warned him gently. Understanding could be just another form of control. Evan nodded. Humans had learned that lesson many times. The council reconvened. The projections were updated. Human presence increased long-term alliance stability by measurable margins. Attempts to isolate or manipulate humans increased resistance and distrust. A vote was proposed. Expand human integration slowly, transparently, and voluntarily. It did not pass unanimously. Some species were afraid, not of human strength but of human influence. Empires built on distance and hierarchy could not survive proximity to humans. Back on the station, Evan received an encrypted message marked priority. Observation status elevated. He was no longer just a liaison. He was a reference point. He felt the weight of it, but he did not change his routine. That night, Lyra requested permission for a final interview. It was granted under strict limits. They met in a neutral space, fully clothed, fully observed. She asked him a direct question. Why had he stayed silent that first day? Evan answered simply, because he did not know her intent and silence gave her room to show it. Lyra recorded the answer and ended the session. Later, alone, she realized the truth. Humans did not rush to define others. They waited. That patience reshaped every interaction. In distant systems, analysts adjusted their models again. Humanity was not loud. It did not conquer first. It connected. And that, many were beginning to understand, might be far more dangerous than force. The station's corridors were quieter than usual, but tension lingered in the air. Every crew member sensed the subtle shift. Humans were no longer just participants. They were a variable that could not be ignored. Evan moved through the corridors with a calm that had become habitual. He had grown used to observation, to the weight of attention. Yet this cycle, he noticed more than just eyes watching. There were whispers, small glances exchanged between alien crew members, questioning, calculating. Lyra approached him that day, her expression serious. She did not speak immediately, only walked alongside him. Finally, she asked about the doorway moment, not as an accusation but as a study. Evan paused, choosing his words carefully. He explained that his silence had not been fear or hesitation but observation. He had waited to understand intent, to see beyond the immediate display. Her eyes softened. That understanding was exactly what made humans unpredictable and, in many ways, powerful. She recorded her own impressions, noting the human ability to influence without coercion, to assert without aggression. Myra joined them later, speaking privately with Evan. She warned that some species were uncomfortable with this human way. They feared connection built on choice rather than command. She asked if he realized the significance of his actions. Evan shrugged gently, saying that he acted instinctively, following what he knew about human behavior and trust. Yet, even he could feel the subtle waves of consequence spreading outward. In the observation center, Commander Hale reviewed footage of human interactions. Small acts, listening, waiting, acknowledging without dominating, were logged meticulously. These were not heroic actions in the conventional sense, but they produced results that were impossible to ignore. Tensions reduced, cooperation increased, and disputes were solved without escalation. Across the station, the small group that had attempted subtle sabotage observed the humans again. Their plan to create chaos and test reactions had failed. Humans had repaired the systems calmly, ensured safety for all, and then quietly resumed their work. The planners could not comprehend it. Their rules, derived from control and intimidation, did not apply. Lyra made another report. Humans do not act for recognition or reward in the ways most species expect. Their choices are grounded in relational understanding and restraint. This creates bonds that persist even under stress, and it confounds those who rely on reaction and fear to govern others. That evening, Evan met Tomas and Myra in the common hall. They spoke in soft tones about minor repairs and routine tasks, deliberately keeping the conversation mundane. Yet to observers, the exchange revealed a profound truth. Humans reinforce trust through ordinary interaction. This was subtle influence, not force. The council convened again, debating how to manage humans aboard the station and throughout the system. One faction argued that humans should be isolated, restricted, and monitored closely. Another suggested careful integration, using transparency and voluntary participation. The debate was heated but carried out with caution, knowing that misreading human behavior could have consequences. Meanwhile, back on the station, Lyra continued to study Evan. She asked direct questions about his motivations, his choices, and his thought process. He answered plainly, never overcomplicating his reasoning. His honesty was its own form of influence. She realized that this quality, the human capacity for clear, honest thought even under scrutiny, was something that could not be replicated or controlled. Myra, observing from a distance, noted that humans could inspire loyalty without issuing orders. Trust built through choice rather than command was a rare commodity in the galaxy. This gave humans a kind of quiet dominance that was difficult to counter or undermine. One late cycle, a communication arrived from the council. They requested an update on human integration progress, emphasizing transparency and observation. Evan compiled a report, focusing on facts, behavior, and outcomes, leaving interpretation to the recipients. The report, simple and direct, highlighted what humans did naturally: maintain composure, foster cooperation, and influence outcomes subtly. That night, Evan stood by the viewport, looking out at the vastness of space. He thought about the ripple effect of human behavior, how silence, observation, and choice could shift perspectives across species. It was not loud, not aggressive, but it was effective. Lyra, finishing her final notes for the day, reflected on what she had seen. Humans do not rush to define or control. They wait, understand, and act in ways that are difficult to anticipate. That patience reshapes every interaction and, ultimately, the station itself. The small faction that had tried to manipulate humans acknowledged defeat quietly. They did not understand humans fully, and their failure was a lesson in humility. Evan returned to his quarters, unaware of the council's ongoing deliberations. He only knew that each choice he made, even silence, had impact. Human influence aboard the station was subtle, relational, and persistent. Outside, stars shimmered silently. Entire civilizations might one day see humans not as warriors, nor as rulers, but as connectors. Their quiet strength, patience, and ability to inspire trust without force were becoming evident. Lyra and Myra observed and recorded, aware that humans had changed the dynamics of the station forever. In that quiet, understated way, humanity had begun to assert itself, not through dominance but through connection, understanding, and the simple, powerful act of choice. The station moved quietly through its orbit, a humming network of life and machinery. Humans aboard continued their routines, seemingly ordinary, yet their presence carried weight that few others could measure. Evan walked through the corridors, noting the subtle shifts in attention and interaction. Every glance, every pause, carried significance now. Commander Hale observed from the control center, reviewing cycles of data. Reports had come in from multiple observers. Humans had stabilized conflicts, encouraged cooperation, and inspired trust in ways that no strategy manual could predict. The Council had taken note. Predictions now included human relational influence as a key factor in long-term stability. Lyra joined Evan later in the common hall. She did not approach with challenge or experiment. Instead, she asked for his thoughts, his honest assessment of the station's dynamics. Evan spoke plainly, without pretense or analysis. He described what he observed, how humans instinctively acted to maintain trust and order, and how others responded. His simplicity was its own kind of influence. Lyra recognized the power in straightforward honesty. Myra watched silently from a corner, understanding that humans had a unique edge. Not through weapons or fleets, but through consistent, honest interaction and the ability to maintain calm and clarity in the midst of tension. Humanity's subtle dominance was quiet but undeniable. The Council had reconvened, deliberating whether to expand human presence and influence across allied systems. One faction argued that humans should remain limited and observed closely, fearing unpredictability. Another argued that their integration could strengthen alliances, reduce conflict, and bring stability. The debate stretched across cycles, but humans themselves were unaware of the magnitude of the discussion. Back on the station, a minor emergency arose. A cargo module misaligned, threatening minor damage. Sensors detected the issue, and alarms signaled potential danger. Tomas and other engineers reacted immediately, coordinating human and non-human crews. Evan assisted in communication, providing clarity without demanding authority. Within minutes, the module was secure, and operations continued seamlessly. Analysts watching noted once again that humans managed tension with calm coordination, not displays of force. In the observation center, Lyra reviewed her final notes on human behavior for the cycle. Humans do not dominate through fear. They do not seek to control through coercion. Their strength lies in patience, observation, and relational trust. These qualities allow humans to stabilize situations, inspire cooperation, and influence others subtly, without visible authority. She added that attempts to manipulate humans often backfired, as humans acted in accordance with choice and integrity rather than expectation. Evan returned to his quarters and looked through the viewport at the distant stars. He reflected on the ripple effects of human behavior. Small choices, quiet observations, and moments of restraint had far-reaching consequences. What seemed like ordinary actions could shift relationships, calm tensions, and establish trust across species. Myra joined him, speaking softly about what they had witnessed on the station. Humans had changed the dynamics without realizing it. Their patience and clarity had created bonds that no formal policy could replicate. Evan nodded. Being human had always been about understanding, choosing wisely, and acting with integrity. Lyra, finishing her notes, considered the future. Humans did not seek power or recognition. Their influence was quiet, relational, and persistent. It could not be forced, bought, or predicted. The galaxy might underestimate humans, but those who observed closely knew they were a force unlike any other. In distant systems, analysts recalibrated strategies, models, and expectations. Human behavior was integrated into long-term planning, not as soldiers or rulers, but as connectors, stabilizers, and silent influencers. Evan stood once more at the viewport, unaware of the council's debates or the strategic recalculations his presence had inspired. He only knew that humans acted with thought, care, and patience. Those qualities, simple yet profound, had begun to reshape alliances and interactions throughout the station. In quiet moments, the subtle power of humanity became evident. A single choice, a pause, a calm word could alter the course of events more than any weapon. The doorway incident, once a small test, had become symbolic. It represented the human ability to influence, connect, and stabilize. Strength was not always loud. Dominance was not always visible. Influence could emerge from observation, patience, and choice. And so, humanity quietly secured its place aboard the station and in the wider galaxy. Not through force, not through conquest, but through connection, understanding, and the simple power of being human.